This is a learning nugget from the Include3 project. It is an Erasmus project and is co-funded by the European Union. Include3 is an international project involving 5 countries: Belgium, Cyprus, Germany, Lithuania, and Slovenia. Main theme is to show pathways towards inclusion for people with intellectual disabilities. The project will open ways from sheltered workshops into the primary labor market. The project will formulate the Include3 method, on which vocational counselors in sheltered workshops or other institutions can work. In this learning nugget, we want to show the results from our work package 3. In various focus groups in our partner countries, we had many dialogues with vet professionals, employers, and workshop participants. As a result, we have worked out 3 main principles for the work of CGC professionals: empowerment, participation, individualization. What this can mean for the practical work with the peoples with intellectual disabilities, we want to show in this learning nugget. This is Julia. She is the managing director of a workshop for people with disabilities. Julia is a very experienced career guidance counselor and is now describing this work to her new colleague, Paul. This is Paul. He has finished his studies at the College of Education and done his bachelor's in social working. Now he starts his first job at the workshop. On his first day in the shelter workshop, Paul is hesitant what his task will be. Julia shows him the workshop and introduces him to the participants and his new colleagues. She tells him that he will work as a vocational trainer. Paul is pleased, but still not quite sure what his duties will be. In her introduction, Julia declares Paul that it is not the main task of the sheltered workshop to provide a cozy workspace for peoples with disabilities. This is just one possibility. For many of them, it is better when they don't stay there till their retirement. In her view, the main task is to make the participants able to work in the first labor market. From Paul's point of view, a sheltered workshop is the best place to be for people with disabilities. He expresses his doubts to Julia and declares what he has learned in his studies. Julia makes clear that this view is quite old-fashioned. She explains to him that there is a United Nations resolution called Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD. The core principles of the CRPD are autonomy and self-determination, as well as inclusion. What means the equal coexistence of people with and without disabilities? Julia says that the CRPD is the base on which the sheltered workshops do their job. It demands full and equal participation of people with disabilities in all areas of life, education, work, healthcare, and political participation. Furthermore, it urges for the elimination of discrimination, the downsizing of barriers, and the promotion of accessibility. Paul is not quite sure how to put this convention into praxis. Julia declares that the sheltered workshop uses the Include3 project method to implement the convention in their daily work. Paul has never heard from the Include3 method. Julia declares that the integration of people with intellectual disabilities into the primary labor market is based on 3 central pillars: empowerment, participation, individualization. These points are known to Paul, and he asks Julia what this new method means. Julia answers that the Include3 method comprises different tools and features in one process: the counseling, the training, and the networking. Julia tells Paul that she knows that this is not easy to understand. Therefore, they use the Include3 method. It comprises the learning process of the person with disabilities and the learning process of the counselor in one methodological setting. Julia declares that empowerment shows the person with disabilities their strength and supports their ability to decide what kind of work he will and can do. It is important that this person knows his skills very good before he or she goes in an internship. For the participant, this part is very important because he or she can perceive himself and understand the demands of the working life. Counselors living active participation need to test and reflect to understand not only the spoken, but also the unspoken points. This is very important because the counselor understands the personality of his client. And as a counselor, one has to build a network for the person with disabilities that can support him. That means to integrate family or a teacher or the institution in the process. And he himself has to be in contact with the employers and the responsible persons in other institutions. Julia declares that the person with disabilities can strengthen his skills, can reach self-confidence in his own abilities. The person can learn that he or she is not lacking abilities, but can better them. This is an orientational phase in which many changes can be reached. Therefore, it can be repeated in a few years, or if it's necessary. Paul asks whether individualization is done through the first two pillars, but Julia tells him that this point is the most important, and it is a long-lasting one. Individualization means to find individual customized solutions. No hasty box ticking. Paul has to keep in mind that he is counselor and trainer in one person, and he has to accompany the person with disabilities until he is settled in his new job. That includes counseling sessions, training, and coaching sessions to a variety of contents. Paul is quite unsure which contents Julia means and asks for more information. Julia tells him that the content is orientated on the needs of the person with disabilities. Therefore, the name individualization. It can be technical and interdisciplinary content, such as work virtues, dealing with superiors and colleagues, personal interests. That can also mean methods to reduce anxiety and stress. Then Julia goes further in declaring the different parts of the workshop and the possibility of an internship for the person with disabilities. She tells Paul that he will be a counselor and a trainer and will be responsible for the whole Include process for a few participants. Julia wants to go further in her description of the Include3 method, but will be disturbed. Eventually, a small woman burst into the room without knocking. She is nearly crying when she tells Julia that there is a problem. She says that Pete wants her to work in the carpentry workshop. Maggie sobs and tells that she cannot do this because it is so noisy. She wants to work in the packaging unit. She urges Julia to come with her and clarify this. With a side glance to Paul, Julia is leaving the room. After Julia is back, she explains to Paul that situation as an important example for his future work. As a counselor, he will always be in charge for his participants because it is very important for them to have one person which is every time responsible and can be asked. Julia tells Paul that he will be the most important contact person for the participants and will accompany him or her in the whole integration process. For this job, there are some skills very important. Open-minded, trustworthy, reliable, communicative, sensible, creative, organized. Paul is thinking about this information and says that he will need a lot of training before he can do this. Julia agrees. She explains how important the training of the counselors is because they have to be flexible in their role as vocational trainer, network coordinator, and counselor. But she tells Paul also that the Include3 method takes this into account and offers technical and interdisciplinary content in vocational education and training. Thank you for your attention. Visit us on our website or on social media